nature, right? Anybody, raise your hand if you know what nurture versus nature means, like that debate. Yeah, basically, are we shaped because of our biology, our genetics, or are we more shaped because of our parents, our friends, our environment? Max comes out, he's perfect. He's got a beautiful, full head of blonde hair, just like I used to have. Gorgeous. Comes out of the womb, he's an easy baby, like easy baby. Mindy and I were like, this is nurture. 5 seconds of perfect parenting. We did it. That's why this kid's perfect. 4 years later, Ben comes along and it's clear right away he's a terrier. He comes out, he's colicky, he's screaming. We grew to love him. I'm just kidding, we love him. So one evening, I get the pleasure of giving both of my boys a bottle. Have any of you ever gotten to give a baby a bottle, like feed them a bottle? Yeah? Cool. It's pretty awesome. Well, both of my kids, both of them get their genetics from me. They're large, big, and charged. I give them one baby bottle, they would be like, seriously? Get that out of my face, both boy. They would suck the baby bottle so hard that it would whistle. So when I would sit down and give them the bottle, I would have to line them up like shots on the side of my recliner because they were draining quickly. One evening, I'm sitting down, watching one of our many Louisiana reality TV shows, and I'm giving Benjamin the bottle, right? And he's just there jamming on it. And at 6 months, when he was done, throwing up against the wall. Again, here we go. Ran out of bottles, so I'm just rocking. And I don't have a shirt on. I knew the juniors were going to bring it, right? All of a sudden, I feel this. Shikook. Look, guys, take the tape off for those of you who take French. Listen to me. If you ever hear a woman use the word latch to describe this process right here, trust me when I tell you, understatement, think pit bull. Much more accurate. So I got it, he's nursing, and I jump up, and I'm screaming, there's something in my boob in his eye! And I'm trying to get him off. When the spring bride, she's not coming. I'm trying to get him off. He's not coming off. He grabs the other one in the back of me. So then I'm like, okay, I can't push him off because I'm going to snap his collarbone if I push him harder. I'm going to just swing him off. He starts to go, woo, woo. He's not going to. Finally, Mindy comes into the living room and she's like, oh my God, let me go get my phone. I'll be right back. I want to record this. Which she did and put it on YouTube. I took it off. Took it off. It's not there. I know. Ooh. So I took it off. Ben's special. Max is too. They're both unique. That's how God created them. And you're special. And I know that some of you, probably those of you who are younger, you hear that. I know that there's a lot more of you who believe that than a lot of you over here. A lot of you over here, young adults, seniors about to graduate from high school. How many more days? 14. Not that who's counting? Yeah, 14. Awesome. 14 days. Congratulations, guys. Young adults, there's probably some of you who think that when I tell you you're special, you think that's cheap sentimentality. There's some of you who probably want to believe that's true, But you can come to me and share a bunch of life experiences with me to prove otherwise. There's some of you who might remember a time in your life when you felt like you were special. You felt like when you heard the gospel reading or someone teaching the Bible or teaching the faith to you, that they said, if God came down and you were the only person on earth, that he would have died just for you. You're that special. In the Old Testament it says, God has counted the hairs on your head, even before you were born. And because he saved so much time for me, he could spend a little more time on you. And so he was able to count. And that's how special you are. When I was here, sitting here, and here, I can honestly tell you that I didn't feel special. As Mr. Simon said, I'm from J-Town, Jeanneret, Louisiana. We grew up a few blocks away from Lejeune's Bakery, best French bread on the planet. And I know some of you here in Liberia disagree, but nonetheless, that's what we believe. I grew up down the street. My dad had an affair with my mom, and when he found out that she was pregnant for me, he let her know that he had another family living in another part of Louisiana. And my mom was like, I don't want your money, I just want you to be involved in your son's life. And he told her, he said, I'd rather give you money because I can't be involved in his life, or else my other family up in northern Louisiana will find out about it, so I can't do it. So she said, well then if you're not willing to do that, then we don't want you involved in his life. I'm not going to have you kind of coming in and out. You're either in or you're out. And he chose out. So my mom, a single parent raising me, in the late 1970s and 80s, that was a lot more rare than it is today. Statistics show that about between 30 and 50% of young people are being raised in single-parent homes. I grew up in poverty. There wasn't welfare in the late 1970s, but they had food stamps. And so I went to school on a scholarship. I started off going to school at St. Joseph's School in Jeanneret, Louisiana. Is it even still open? I don't even know. No, it's closed. And then transferred here when I was in the 6th grade. My mom, because we were so poor, my mom she knew that if I went to the public schools in Jeanneret, and that's not to insult them, but what she had seen was my cousins go through. In my mom's mind, if I didn't get a Catholic education, if I didn't go to St. Joe's, and if I didn't end up continuing and coming on to Catholic High, that I would continue the cycle of poverty in my life, that I would end up like 3 of my 5 first cousins dropping out of school, getting addicted to drugs, and 2 of them died because of drug-related illnesses. I would end up like the rest of my family, morbidly obese and slowly dying from diabetes. That's what the picture my mom had in mind. So she worked 4 jobs at a time in order to be able to send me to Catholic school. And again, up until I was like 12, 13 years old, which was the time that I transferred here to Catholic High when I was in 7th grade. My first year here was the last year. It was an all-boys school. My 8th grade year was the first year that the girls from Mount Carmel came and we were co-ed. But I remember up until that time, I would go to like a babysitter's house because my mom would work until 10, 11, sometimes midnight. She would wait tables. She would work at a bar as a cocktail waitress sometimes. On the weekends, she worked both days selling and collecting insurance payments, so she worked all the time. And again, like I said, up until I was about 11 or 12, I'd go to babysitter's house. But when you're 12, you can go home alone, and that's what I did. And so I'd go home back to Jeanneret, and we lived in this roach, rat-infested shack of an apartment that my family allowed my mom and I to live in rent-free. Many times we didn't have the electricity would get turned off because my mom couldn't afford the electricity. She would prioritize my tuition payments over paying our electricity bill. There were times when we didn't have gas, which would have been the only way we could have heated our house. I remember how important it was for her, for me to be here, and the sacrifices we made. But I'd go to this rundown, roach, rat-infested shack every day, and I'd be alone. And I had all these bad feelings inside me, which at the time, I didn't know what they were. Had no idea what they were. Today, at 43, looking back, I know exactly what they were. I was scared. We didn't live in a great part of Jenner, and some of you might be thinking, well, there is no great part of Jenner. Well, there was when I grew up in. It was a great town in many ways to grow up in when I was there. But we lived in that was bordering on a bad section. People would walk up and down the street in front of my house. They knew I was there, and they would scream, "Hey, fat, whatever, boy, we're going to come in there and mess you up." And I remember being scared. My mom wasn't there, so I'm alone. So I'm insecure, I'm lonely, I'm sad. And I remember turning to food at a very early age in order to deal with my feelings of loneliness, of shame, of sadness. A lot of it just being lonely, and I was worried. One of the things you don't realize, especially as you guys get older and you guys start to become your own person and you start pushing your parents away, and you just don't want them around anymore. One of the things that you really can't appreciate, when you're in high school or when you're in school, is that just their presence of being around you, while it may anger you and aggravate the heck out of you a lot of times, I totally get that, also gives you a feeling of security. And many nights I would go home, cry myself to sleep, and I would meet my mom the next morning. When I was 16, I transferred, as I said, here at the Catholic High in 7th grade, and that was big for me. That was a huge moment. I was excited. My mom was excited for me. But you have to know, my family made fun of me, and they made fun of my mom for me coming and getting a Catholic education. They would insult my mom, and they would insult me and say, "What the hell do you guys think? Do you think y'all are better than us? You think he needs a private education?" And she would constantly tell him, "Connie, if you weren't paying all that money in tuition, you guys could live in a better house." And my mom ignored it, but they made fun of me. You think you're smart, you think you're something special, and you ain't no better than the rest of us. They would tell me all the time. I remember growing up. The first day we pulled up in this parking lot right in front of the gym here, I remember we were following who I'd find out to be one of my classmates. His mom had just bought a brand new Porsche, and my mom was driving a 1981 Reliant King. You probably don't even know what kind of car that is, nor should you. But let me tell you this, it was backfiring in the parking lot. Some of you, in case you don't know what a backfire is, because vehicles don't normally do that today, it's like a shotgun blast coming out of a muffler. And so, right in front of the gym, everyone was kind of lined up, and they were watching me get out of the car. And I was like, "Mom, don't make me get out of the car. Please don't make me get out of the car." And she's like, "Baby, you got to get out of the car." I was like, "Kill me now, God. Take my life now." But he didn't. I got out. And I met some people. I made some friends, kind of, sort of, my first year here. But as I said, I turned to food, and so I was eating and eating and eating. Let me fast forward a bit to my sophomore year in high school. Sophomores, where are you? All right. So when I was a sophomore, I remember my mom, like I said, worked. I'd ride the bus back home. Sophomore year in high school, Mom comes and she picks me up from school, which was weird. My mom rarely picked me up from school right after school. She was waiting right there when school got out. She was waiting to pick me up. And I was like, "Yes, Mom's here." This could only mean one thing. We're going to the Chinese buffet. So I get in the car and we start driving back to Jeanneret, not going to the Chinese buffet. And we get to a grocery store at Jeanneret. At the time it was called Robbie's or Roby's, whichever you call it. And we walk to the back to the butcher counter, and there's this big old guy standing there in a blood-stained white coat holding a bloody meat cleaver in his hand. Really put me at ease. And I'm like, "Mom, what the heck are we doing here?" And she said, "You'll see, baby." And he's clearly expecting us, and he waves us back and he says, "Hey, Connie, boy, y'all come on back." And so we follow him back, and we go into this big, deep cooler. And as we're walking into this cooler, there are these cows that have been slaughtered and cut in half and hanging from these chains to dry out before the butcher cuts them into meat that he sells. And on the left, there are these whole pigs hanging from these chains that are being prepared for a bunch of boucheries and cochon delays and Mardi Gras. And I'm walking, looking at all this, and it's cold, and I can smell dried beef blood in the air as I walk into this cooler. And we walk up, and the butcher's standing next to this black steel metal platform with a big pole coming up from it that had a big circle on top. And he puts his hand on it, and he says, "Meroy, écoutez-moi." He said, "This here is a Toledo meat scale." He said, "This is what we use right here to weigh the animals, the cochon and the cows." And I looked at my mom like, "Mom, what the heck are we doing?" And she said, "The doctor called me today, Dr. Brown in Generate, and he said he needs to get an accurate weight on you for your medical chart." And so I said, "So why don't we go to the doctor's office?" Which is what we've done since I was born. And she said, "Baby, you haven't been able to weigh on the doctor's scale in years. It only goes up to 350 pounds. And so at 16, as a sophomore, I'm standing in a meat cooler with this butcher in front of a meat scale, trying to wrap my mind around the fact that as a 10th grader, I weigh more than 350 pounds. But honestly, I'm still fairly optimistic. I'm thinking 351.6 tops, right? And the butcher's like impatient. He's like, "Come on, Roy, get on up there so we can get a weight on you." And you know, like, I don't know about you, but like whenever I'm weighing in, I'm like, empty on my pockets, because kick off my shoes, because that's going to make a heck of a difference at this point if I'm outcome. And I step up onto this Toledo meat scale, and my feet stick to that black cold steel platform. And I see this huge red needle spin to 454. And I hear my mom gasp. And I look down, and I see the shame and embarrassment, fear and sadness start trickling down her cheeks. And she looked up at me and she said, "We got to do something about this, Roy." And I said, "I know, Mom, but we didn't." I look over, and the butcher's like, having the most awkward moment of his life, probably. And we couldn't have done anything about it. Maybe we could have. My mom wasn't working those jobs so that she could afford luxuries in life. She was working those jobs so that she could get partial tuition for me to be able to come here on scholarship. So it wasn't like she was neglecting me because she didn't want to be with me. She was neglecting me because she knew, and history would bear my mom to be correct, that if she didn't do it, that I most likely wouldn't be alive today. If I hadn't come to school here and my mom hadn't made the sacrifices that it took for me to get to school here. So as you can imagine, I'm a poor kid, morbidly obese, coming to school, which in my mind, with a bunch of kids who were good looking, I was the biggest thing walking through the halls. No one was bigger than me. And it seemed to me at the time that everyone was rich. Now, I know today that wasn't true, but it felt like everyone certainly had more money than we did. And so I'm coming to school every day. And there were some people who were really kind to me. There were some people who reached out to me, but there were quite a few people who unmercifully bullied me when I walked through these halls. You see, unlike some people who would put their weight on in their stomachs, I didn't put most of my weight. I didn't have this really big stomach. I would put my weight on in my upper back. So I was fat, but most of it was like in my upper back. And I remember one day, one of my classmates, I walked into class, and my classmates had all taken their PE uniforms and shoved them up the back of the shirt of one of my classmates. And they had taped a big sign on it with one of their test papers and took a Sharpie and wrote Roy on it. And I walked in and saw it. I'd become quite good at deflecting and learning how to handle it when people made fun of me, and I just started laughing. When I started laughing, I was like, "Ah, you guys got me. That's pretty good. That's awesome." And one of them comes up to me, and he sticks his hand under the big flab of fat in my back, and he jabs it in there, and he says, "Can you feel that, fat boy? Can you He said, I can't even feel your ribs. Do you even have ribs? And he said a bunch of other things that I can't really say in public. And I said, no, I can't feel it. And the truth was that I didn't feel his hand in there because there was so much fat back there. But the truth is that I felt it. I still feel it. And I remember thinking that had to be the worst moment of my life. That had to be the worst moment of my life. My sophomore year was one of the worst years because our house, our little rundown road to Rattfest had shot and Generette burnt down. And so all the crap we didn't have, we lost all of that. And I remember coming to school one day in street clothes, and I didn't have any books. And I remember the faculty, and I remember a lot of people being really kind to me. And the next day when I came to school, I had a stack of new uniforms, and I had all new books and school supplies, because Dr. Voorhees bought those for me. I'll never forget you. Thank you. And I remember, okay, there's hope. And I remember, but that didn't stop the bullying. You know, I was very grateful. That didn't stop the bullying, but something changed between my sophomore and my junior year. Now, let me be fair, there were a couple of folks who were really kind to me. That man standing in the back, Mr. Josh Gilwell, and his father. I know that's hard for you to believe. There was another day that I remember, and Josh will know who it is, and some of the older alumni will know who it is. There was a guy who was picking on me, and he was a senior, and I was a sophomore at the time. And there was this really big football player, and you guys don't know who he is. But I want to tell you this because it's a moment, it's something I'll never forget out of my life. And he was just this really nice guy. His name was Jamie Norris. And he saw this guy picking on me. And Jamie was, he got a full ride scholarship to go play Division I football in Kansas. He went up to that kid who was his classmate who was picking on me. He grabbed it with one hand, grabbed him by the shirt collar, lifted him up, put him up against the locker, and he goes, if I ever see you touch or talk to Roy Pettifees again, you're going to have to deal with me. And the guy was like, okay, no problem. And dropped him. And I just remember how good that felt that someone stood up for me. And Jamie wasn't necessarily liked by everybody. He had his own social struggles. He didn't have all the social skills that would have made him the most popular person. He was one of the strongest athletes, and so he was respected for that. But he wasn't perfect, and he wasn't universally accepted as being perfect. But so it wasn't like easy for him to do that. It was a risk for him to do that. It took courage for him to stand up for someone who at the time felt like I couldn't stand up for myself. But something interesting happened between sophomore and junior year. I go into my junior year, and people pretty much stopped picking on me my junior year. And that was awesome for like the first month, the first semester, like up until Christmas of my junior year in high school. It was great. But I realized something. Not only were those people not picking on me, not only were they not giving me negative attention, they weren't giving me any attention. And I remember thinking as I went into the spring of my junior year, I preferred it when people would pick on me. And I remember compensating and trying to get attention in ways that was not healthy. I would act out, I would say stupid things just in order to get some attention, because I remember I preferred negative attention over no attention. And I learned something powerful my junior year in high school here. I learned that more than anything in our lives, our deepest human need is really to be seen. We would prefer to be seen in ways that we don't like. We would prefer negative attention because our greatest fear is to feel invisible. And reflecting back on my time here, I can only reflect back on what for me was a contradiction of huge proportions. I was the biggest thing with a heartbeat in this town, and I felt like I was invisible, that no one saw me. And I know some of you, as you sit here today, you're like, dang, dude, That's rough. I'm really sorry that you have to go through that, Roy, and that you felt invisible. I've never felt invisible like that. And I bet, I'm assuming that there are a lot of you who never have, never will feel invisible like that. But I would suggest to you that we all feel invisible in some senses in our life. I remember today, my counselor, a few years ago, I had this young man come into my office, and this guy was a stud. He was a junior in high school. He just was a stud. I mean, he looked great, came from the right family. He was being recruited his freshman year in high school by multiple universities, and his nickname was Cannon. That wasn't his name. His nickname was Cannon because he could throw a football like it was a freaking cannon. And I went, but he was depressed. He was really depressed, and he was, he just told his mom one day, I don't feel like I just want to wake up anymore. And that concerned her, and so they brought him to see me in my counseling office. And so as I sat with him, I'm looking at this young man who, compared to me at his age, has everything that I wanted and had none of, and yet he is as depressed as I was when I was in school. And so he begins to tell me, he goes, the only thing people see in me is my mom. He goes, that's it. It's all my dad sees, it's all my mom sees, that's what my coaches see. All they see is my athletic ability. And he goes, look, I'm great and I'm going to go play in college, but I'm not going to go pro. He's like, I want to be a veterinarian. He goes, I don't even think my father knows that I play the violin and can play it well. I know no one at school knows because they don't want to know that. All they see is the cannon. And so for this young man, he felt invisible. Even though he was seen, it was only one part of him. There was a bunch of other pieces of him that no one noticed that were really important to him. I've worked with countless teenagers who have come into my office and said, I do feel like everyone else sees me, but there's this one girl or this one guy that would mean that I'm not even on their radar. They don't even know that I have a heartbeat, that I exist in their universe. And if they could see me and just acknowledge my existence, my life would be so much better. I had a young man come in one time, a young woman come in one time who was being picked on because she had freckles and also had pretty bad acne. And as I worked with her, I came to find out that she was also adopted, and that she hadn't told her parents because she didn't want her parents to know that she was being ridiculed because she was adopted. And people would make fun of her because she didn't know who her real mom was. And no one knew how much that hurt her. So we all feel invisible. We all have a need to be seen, a need for people to see us. We all have a need for certain people to see us. Ultimately, though, my friends, that need is to be seen by God. God sees us, but He expects other people in this life to be able to see us for Him when He can't be here personally. He's counting on you to see one another. He's counting on you to be kind to one another. I would go on my junior year in high school. I felt invisible, and there were people who saw me. There were people who were really kind to me. But when I stood in St. Peter's Church for my graduation, when I sat right here at the end of my senior year in high school, if you'd have asked me, tell me 3 words describe yourself to me in 3 words, I would have said I'm poor, fat, and stupid. Because I graduated near the bottom of my class. I really thought I was stupid because I had some really, really smart people in my class. And compared to them, I thought I was stupid, and I had the grades to prove it. I went on to USL. I didn't do so well my first year in college, and so the university invited me to take some time off to rethink my career goals. And so I stepped out, and I got a job working at the Port of Iberia, and I was picking up trash. It was really good. This is like 1992. I'm making, like, I don't know, $8 an hour, just picking up trash. And it's great. Now, it's 500, I'm 500 pounds, right? It's hot. I'm walking on crushed limestone all day long, just on this job site, and we're building these oil field platforms that would go out into the Gulf of Mexico. We're not picking up trash, everything's good. One day, this redneck is standing in the middle of the road in this construction site. And I can tell he's a redneck because he has a rebel flag wrapped around his head. He also has on a plaid shirt with pearl buttons on the pockets and his sleeves cut off. He could have been an extra on Duck Dynasty. Long live, rest in peace, Duck Dynasty. So he's standing there, he's got a big old cowboy belt buckle, and he's standing in the middle of the road, and he's looking at me like this. Dang, I think he goes all the way around. Wow. And then he looks at me like this. And he says, he screams, he goes, "Tiny!" And I'm like, actually, I couldn't have done that. It would have been more. I was like, "Me?" He goes, "Come on over here." So I walk on up to him, and he pulls our pedophiles off of my hard hat, and he puts on a new label that has "Tiny" in quote marks. And he takes the white stripe. Now, I know two other things about this guy. He's got a white hard hat on with blue stripes that told me he's a superintendent, and the blue stripes meant that he's an iron worker. Now, if there's iron workers are guys who catwalk on these beams while the other beams are being flown in. So they're like this all day long. Like these guys are cuckoo, cuckoo. They're a special breed. There's a social hierarchy everywhere. There's a social hierarchy here. Well, there was a social hierarchy on the construction site. Trash picker-uppers here, the iron workers were here. And he's like the tip-top iron worker, right? So he takes the white stripes off of my hat that said I picked up trash, pulls a roll of blue electrical tape out, and puts on blue stripes on the side of my hat. And he says, "Time! You come and work for me, son." And I'm like, with all due respect, sir, I'm flattered. I'm flattered. I don't think I could get up the first flight of stairs without an oxygen bottle, a mask, and a defibrillator nearby. I'm not putting you up on a steel dummy. I said, "Oh?" He said, "Listen, Tiny," he goes, "I need you to work in my bolt shed." And I was like, "Ooh, shed." That rhymes with shade and chair. Said, "I'm listening." He goes, "Look here, Tiny, see all those idiots up there on the steel?" I said, "Yes, sir." He said, "I guarantee you they're all up there, they're hung over. And I guarantee you they got the wrong darn bolts. They're about to march their butts down here, rumble through this bolt shed looking for the right bolts, and then maybe get them, maybe not. Walk up there all day long, Tiny, up and down. Bunch of hungover rednecks costing me dollars. American. Dollars American, Tiny. I need you to get your big butt, well, and it fits, in that bolt shed, organize those bolts, and give those idiots the right bolts so that we can all do that. Would you be willing to do that for $13 an hour?" I was like, "I'm your man. Yes, I can." And I did, and it was awesome. In the boat, I had a fan, I had a refrigerator, I had two chairs, 2 stools to sit on, and I would make these boats, I'd clean them. Those guys came in, the cool guys, the ones who I wanted to be seen by when I was here. These guys are like the tip top. And they're nice to me. They're like nice to me, and they just want to talk with me, and they want to visit with me. And they don't either seem to notice or care that I weigh 535 pounds, that I smell. And I'm like, it's weird for me because I'm like, look, people don't talk to me. People aren't like nice to me like that. They're like embarrassed to be around me. And they invite me to participate in their social gatherings in the evenings, which I can't talk about here. But they were special. And so I was included. And look, we start doing this for like 7 months, and I'm doing this job. And I'm like, this is my vocation. This is what I'm going to do for the rest of my life. I'm going to be an iron worker, bolt cleaner, organizer guy. I'm going to go get me a travel trailer, get a big dually pickup truck, because they live in RV sites all across America, and they go from job to job. And I'm going to follow these guys around. This is what I am destined to do. And that day, my foreman walks into my boat shed, and he puts his arm, hand on my shoulder, and he says, "Tank!" I said, "Son, you need to get out of here." what are you talking about? He goes, Tiny, listen to me, boy. You don't belong here. I was like, David, what do you mean I don't belong here? I was like, this is the only place I've ever belonged. He says, Tiny, son, listen to me. You sit on those stools all day long. You use words no one knows what the hell you're talking about. You're reading this French guy, Shakespeare, during the day. No one knows that. Tiny, this isn't what you were supposed to do, son. This is what we were born to do. I was like, look, this is what I want to do because, Tiny, you need to go back to college, boy. I was like, I've already been. Bought the t-shirt. A 7X one at that. I don't need to go because, Tiny, listen, son. He said, I've already made more money than you'll probably ever make in your life. History would dare him to be correct on that. He did. He said, but this is what I was born to do. This ain't what you were born to do. You need to go back to college. And he says that and he shoves a big leather tool bag in my chest. And he drags me by my shirt collar to the edge of my boat shed and at the Port of Iberia, and all these cranes start shutting down. And these guys get out and they step out of their cranes and they get down and they start walking up from all over this construction yard. Clearly, this was an organized plan. And as they walk up to me, they all have their hard hats in their hand. And as they get closer, I can see hundreds, tens, 20s, 5s, 1s, and they're shoving it back. And this was weird because it could have gotten any one of them fired because those bullets I'm cleaning are falling and could hit them in the head and get them dead. And this was just really weird for me. And they all stand up and they all have serious looks on their faces. And David puts his hand on my shoulder and he says, Tiny! On behalf of the hungover trailer trash herein gathered, we know that since you've been on this here job, you have either ate, which is redneck for eat, or drank, or otherwise spent every penny you made. And I'm like, yeah, I'm broke, I ain't got no money. Because we know Popeye's fried chicken, got it, Bud Light, got it. Tiny! So we take up a little collection to send your big butt back to college. And those guys come up one by one and they start dumping these hard hats full of cash in this big leather tool bag. And they're saying, good luck, Tiny. Get your big bleep out of here, Tiny. Don't ever let us see your big bleep back out here again, Tiny. Go make something of yourself, Tiny. And look, I'm an emotional guy. And I'm fighting back tears because I know if one tear rolls down my cheek, like I'm going to get a crescent wrench this big across the bridge of my nose. And I'm like, yeah, never coming back. Yeah, and do it going forward. Yeah. And I walk back to my truck and the tears just start cascading down my face. I get into my truck, this is 1992, and I count over $5,000 in that big leather tool bag. It was enough to pay for my tuition, my dorm room, my books, fees, and some Popeye's fried chicken for not 1 year, but 2 years. And so I go back to college, and I remember sitting in my truck. Feeling the way I felt when I was with my mom and when I sat with Doc Voorhees and one of my speech coaches, because I did speech and debate when I was here. I remember feeling there's more to me than I can see. These were people who showed me that when I was here. There's more to me than I can see. And I remember having that idea in my mind, and I remember thinking, all right, I might be able to do something with myself. So I go back to USL at the time, now it's the early 1990s. A guy by the name of Garth Brooks was really popular in the early 1990s. Any of you guys like country music? No? Any of you know who Garth Brooks is? All right, well, he was really, I know he's popular now, but he was really popular. And I wanted to look just like him. So I went out and bought me a big black Stetson cowboy hat. I had a friend of mine make me a shirt just like Garth wore on one of his albums. 2 black squares here and 2 white squares here. A 7X version. I went to a pawn shop on Center Street and bought me a big old belt buckle because I figured I got to look the part, right? That had a guy riding a bronco bull on it. I'd never even been to the rodeo. And at the bottom it says 3rd place. I got me some boots with spurs, and in my mind I looked just like Garth Brooks if he had been stung by killer bees and was in anaphylactic shock. And I'm walking down the street, and these guys who I've come to high school with, they come up to me and they're like, oh, you gotta come to the Catholic Student Center. And I love the church. I'm like, guys, I'm not going to the Catholic Student Center. I'm right off the construction yard, trust me. I don't have any business being there. They're like, Roy, you gotta come through. And I'm like, guys, I'm not going. And he's like, Roy, free donuts. I said, well, I should probably go take a look. And I walked into the Catholic Student Center, and there's a bunch of really religious people there. I'm dropping F-bombs as soon as I walk in the door, because I'm rough around the edges. I smell, and these guys are like really religious. One of them has a t-shirt on that has Jesus bench pressing the cross saying, don't worry, y'all, I got this. And I'm looking at him like, weird. Another guy took the Pope's cross that he carries like this, it's called a crozier. I think he cut it in half, was wearing it around his neck. And they're all kind of looking back at me like, what is it? And is it going to eat us? It's just a group of guys. And so I walk in, and there's this table piled high with boxes of Mesh's donuts, the white box, and the grease is seeping through and you could smell it. It was gorgeous. So I walk over, grab my dozen, go sit down in my love seat that fit me like a chair, snap all 4 legs out from underneath it instantly, and I'm sitting there, Garden Brooks in the Catholic Student Center, and I'm popping in these full donuts with their little mini Oreo cookies. And these people come up to me and they sit next to me, and I'm like, what are you? I didn't say, I dropped the F-bomb. What are y'all doing? And they were like, hey man, who are you? Hungry. And they keep going, and they're like, tell me about your belt buckle. When were you in the rodeo? And so I tell them. I'm like, well, you see, I rode with bronco bulls. And they were like, one guy was like, man, it must have been a big bull. It was the biggest bull. You made it 8 seconds, huh? 9. Yep, sure did. And they start talking with me, and it's like they're being nice to me, which is weird to me, because I don't know what that's like. And then this priest walks in, comes into the Catholic Student Center, and he's just like too happy. Like, he's like 8 moods above me. You know those people who, like, when you're not in a good mood, and you're like, hey! And you just want to punch him in the trachea? Yeah, that's where he was. And he's like whistling. And he comes up to me, and he stands over the big guy, and he goes, something tells me you like to eat. What gave it away? And he said, I know you just powered down 7 donuts, but we're about to go eat pizza at a place that's got a pizza called a T-Rex. It's got 8 different kinds of, it's got bacon on it. I said, hold it, priest. I've had plenty of pizza with bacon bits. Not interested. He said, oh, no, big boy. No bits. Real bacon. I said, I'm listening. He said, I'm going there for lunch, and while we're all going, you want to join us? And I was like, yes, I do. I do. So we walk out back an hour later. This priest is 6'4", 250 dehydrated. I'm 6'2" at the time, 535. He's driving a 1989 Honda Accord, stick shift. Like the last year with the revolving door. We get in the car and he does this, boom, boom. We couldn't even get into the parking lot without me getting out. So I got out. We sit down and we have pizza. And these people are coming to me and they just start asking me about myself. And I'm thinking they're going to push God on me, but they don't. Because they didn't want to hear about me. Because at the time in my mind, if God really loved me, then he wouldn't have let me go through all of the hard stuff that I went through. And they're just nice to me. And they say, hey, we come here once a week. You want to join us? And I'm like, sure. And I go back to the Catholic Student Center twice every week. Donut day and pizza day. And I keep going. And then they asked me to join their club. I was like, guys, I am not religious. You don't want me being in the club. And they were like, we're going to put you in charge of all the food for the Catholic Student Center. I was like, okay, maybe I can be a part of the club. And so I go in and start doing that. And the priest starts meeting with me one-on-one. And those guys became some of my best friends. And they saw me in a way that no one else in my life ever saw me. And the next 2 years, from when those iron workers gave me that money, and when I went into that Catholic Student Center, I would go back to church, get confirmed, which I didn't get in high school, and I would start seeing a counselor. I would continue to go to spiritual direction with the priest. I would start exercising. I'd start seeing a nutritionist. And over the next 2.5 years, I lost 300 pounds without surgery and without medication. I tell you that, thank you. So in 1991, I wore a 7X shirt, size 64-inch waist. Today I stand with a large shirt, 34-inch waist. And I tell you that to know that there's power in the way that you see people. There's just a part of growing up where I know that when you're in school, you think that what you do and what you say to people might matter now, but it might not matter later on. And if you get nothing else out of my talk today, I want you to know that what you do in these halls matters. How you talk to one another, what you say, whether you smile to someone, whether you're kind to someone. And you don't need to do anything overly heroic, but you know when your classmates are getting picked on, you know when people are being left out, you know when they're being bullied online, you know when someone's about to share an inappropriate Snapchat and so it'll go viral. You know that. You know when that stuff's happening. And I know it takes courage, but I want you to know that what you do in those moments matters. You also know if you're struggling. And you know what? Honestly, I didn't reach out for help. I knew that I needed help, but when I was walking through these halls, I didn't know what kind of help I needed, and I didn't have the resources that you guys have now here. People didn't know as much as we know now about adolescent depression and how obesity and adolescent depression are correlated. We know stuff about that now, and because of the younger students who are in here, but I know how you guys struggle. I know all of the ways, all of them. I've worked with thousands of teens and know the things that they turn to hurt themselves, to hurt others, to cope, to deal, to process, whether it's worry, whether it's your parents, whether it's uncertainty about your future, whether it's you just don't care, whether you're not fitting in, whether it's a breakup, all of us are going to know all the ways in which you turn. But I would also encourage you to know that, one, this isn't the end of your life. And as bad as you might feel it now, there's life after high school. Some of you go, if someone could only see me, and one of the things that I want you guys to know is that you're all smart. I was in these halls and I thought I was stupid. And today, I'm on a mission to go around and let you know that none of you are stupid. But this place can only measure a couple of types of intelligences. You're all gifted. Every single one of you. We don't need a psychological test for me to know that you're all gifted. You're all gifted. But high school, the best, and this is a great one, will only highlight and celebrate a few of a whole bunch of different types of gifts that will be and can be celebrated after high school. You know, Einstein said, if we judge a fish by its ability to climb a tree, it will grow up its whole life thinking that it's stupid. None of you are stupid. You're all brilliant, and you're all gifted. You may not necessarily be in the ways that a test can measure, and that's important. I'm not saying that's not important, but it's not everything. And so be careful and be gentle with yourselves while you're in this hall. Secondly, I would want to leave you with that our God is absent as he might feel during your struggle. Looking back, I know he was more present to me than I was to myself. But you've got to make a turn to him. And he wants you to turn to him. Finally, I would leave you with this. Thank you. Thank you for being so kind to me and allowing me to come and share my journey with you. I hope that it's meaningful. I hope that it's something that you can share. I hope that if you take something out of it, that you will go home and talk with your parents. Your parents, more than anything in the world, want you to talk to them. And I know that you can give me a litany of why you can't talk to your parents. But you could go home and try. Because some of you, you know you're not trying. And they might not be trying either, but you could take the initiative and open the door. They're always going to be your parent. They're always going to be your parent. It's easier for some of you. I know you're going to go home and tell. You're going to talk to your mom and dad maybe much you don't want to, but still go home and do it. Thank you for welcoming me. Thank you for your kindness to me, and God bless you.
Thank you, Roy. What a talk. I loved really every moment of the talk, especially the end. You're all gifted. I will add, you're all gifts from God. Very, very precious. I love the statement about the fish and the tree. So recognize all those gifts. Recognize how much you are loved, how much you are valued. So again, we thank Mr. Pettifees for being with us today. Again, what a story he has to tell. To think that he walked the same walk that you do today. So a big thank you as we end this last full week of school before Holy Week.